Good morning. Pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, as amended by Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, as extended to June 30th, 2027, this meeting of the Barnstable County Commissioners will be conducted via both in-person and remote means in accordance with applicable law. Members of the public are invited to watch the meeting through live real-time broadcast at www.youtube.com/user/Barnstable County or on www.capecod.gov. Where the public participation is required by law or allowed by the board chair, persons wishing to participate may do so either in person or by accessing the meeting via Microsoft Teams. For instructions on how to join the meeting remotely, please refer to the meeting calendar agenda found on the Barnstable County website under the Meeting Center menu. And with that, I would like to call to order the August 27th, 2025 meeting of the Barnstable County Regional Commissioners. And please join us for a pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and may we have a moment of silence and to join us in a moment of silence to reflect on the bravery and sacrifices of all those who put their lives on the line in service to our country, protecting our safety, our freedom, and our democracy. Thank you. Is there any public comment? Anything online? And there's none here in the audience, so we will move on to the approval of meeting minutes. Do I have a motion?
Here it is. Madam Chairman, I move that we approve the meeting minutes of August 13, 2025, regular meeting minutes.
And I will second that.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, on to general business A. We're going to have an update from the Human Rights Advisory Commission, and we are pleased to have Leslie Dominguez Santos, our Human Rights Coordinator. Good morning, Leslie.
Good morning.
How are you? Busy woman.
Busy. Doing well, though. Thank you for having
me. You've done a lot of great things over the summer.
Thanks. So I was asked to attend to just give an update on what we're hearing from the immigrant community.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to share what we're hearing. It's not a formal, I don't have a PowerPoint or anything, just sort of an update.
Right.
So as the Barnstable County Human Rights Advisory Commission, first I wanted to share that in the past 2 calendar years, so in 2023 and 2024, about 10% of our phone calls were related to immigration issues or national origin.
What was the percentage?
10% in the past 2 years. This year, as of July 1st, 25% of our phone calls were related to immigration or national origin, with an additional few phone calls that have come in from people of color who are perceived to have a different national origin but are actually American-born citizens. As the Human Rights Advisory Commission, we are having immigration-related issues brought to us regularly with a greater frequency than we have in the past. We've made an effort to really connect to the immigrant community across the county. And some of the things that we are hearing from folks, first off, is immigration enforcement really is happening on Cape Cod. Some of that is targeted, looking for a specific individual, and some of that is what have been called raids or sweeps. So people that get caught up in crosshairs for one reason or another. The immigrant community feels very afraid of some of the violent tactics that have been shown across the nation. The wearing of masks is of great concern. The breaking of car windows, breaking down front doors. These are some of the things that our community is seeing and is afraid of. We've also heard about folks who have entered the detention process and how challenging and awful that is. So some of that is families who are left behind are having a hard time locating their family member. A lot of times, the enforcement agencies are moving people in the middle of the night, and so families are not warned ahead of time that they're being moved from Plymouth farther down south to a different detention facility. People have also mentioned terrible conditions in the detention facilities and a lack of due process. We definitely hear about families that are left behind. There's a lot of mixed status families here on Cape Cod. And so folks that have been left behind when their primary breadwinner has been taken are really struggling financially and emotionally. We hear a lot about the mental health toll, the fear, students who don't want to go to school because they're afraid that while they're in school, someone in their family will be seized. Students who are in school but not really capable of studying because, again, fears are so high. We've also heard a lot about the change in TPS status. This directly affects the Cape Cod community because we have many Haitian workers in the caretaking industry here on the Cape, and their change in legal status has impacted a lot of families on the Cape. We hear from service providers that the lawyers that provide immigration assistance on the Cape are overwhelmed. There's too many cases, not enough lawyers. We also hear from service providers that the financial needs are really high, again, with these mixed status families who have lost their breadwinner. We've heard a lot of people aren't showing up. The kids aren't showing up to school. Church members aren't coming to church. They're afraid. People aren't showing up for their appointments because, again, the fear is so high. We also hear a lot of service providers are very focused on what's being called family preparedness documents. So that's really the focus right now of service providers, is making sure that every family knows the passwords to the bank account, knows who's going to pick up the kid from school if the parent is taken into detention. Mm-hmm. So the service providers are really focused on these documents. In terms of what our outreach efforts have included, as you mentioned, we've been at a lot of community fairs this summer, mm-hmm. trying to share out the red cards that are Know Your Rights cards mm-hmm. for immigrants in multiple different languages. We've also, along with many other service providers, been sharing out these family preparedness documents so that everybody's ready. We've compiled a resource list of who safely provides services to the immigrant community, and we're sharing that out. There's a group called the Cape Cod Coalition for Safe Communities that's been trying to share out information and resources. They hosted a legal clinic about 2 months ago, and they had approximately 50 individuals who came to meet with a whole set of lawyers that this group had put together. And of those 50, only 3 of them were able to improve their legal status. So while we want everybody to get in front of a lawyer, oftentimes it doesn't really help. We're also connecting with the schools to make sure that the schools know if a parent is taken into detention, who should the school reach out to pick up that child. And again, there are a lot of community leaders who are working to make sure that the immigrants in their neighborhoods are protected, supported, safe in every way that they can be. Yesterday, was actually the first working meeting of a group between police chiefs and community leaders to talk about how we can continue to keep our communities safe and what does safety mean for everybody. So this conversation included several police chiefs, the sheriff, and then several community leaders. And the idea of this initial meeting really was to share the perspectives of law enforcement and the perspectives of the immigrant community, what the concerns are, what the fears are, and how we can work together on some joint messaging. One of the things that we talked about was that, if law enforcement is staying in its lane, so community policing is making sure that everybody in the community is safe. What our local law enforcement really needs is to know if ICE is coming into the community so that they are prepared, they can keep community members safe. That's not sheltering or harboring anybody. It's just making sure that everybody is safe. Mm-hmm. And they don't want to come unaware on an ICE action where agents are masked and cars are tinted and they don't know that this is happening. So that's a real concern for law enforcement. They would like to know before ICE comes into the community that this is going to happen. We also talked about warm handoffs. If the police know that ICE is coming to do an action on Cape Cod, for an individual who has school-aged children, the hope is that then the police could inform the school, hey, this is happening. Susie is going to need to connect with the authorized caregiver that's in these family preparedness documents. Let's see. Another thing that this working group really talked about was being able to share resources and have open communication so that, again, if the police knows about a family, mixed status family who is really in need, they know who's able to provide services. So opening those communication lines between service providers, law enforcement, and schools. It's going to be a working group, so this group will continue to meet and, again, really try to focus on joint messaging and clarifying what's real, what isn't real. In terms of the Barnstable County Human Rights Advisory Commission, I think our role continues to be sharing out information, making sure that everybody knows who to talk to, who to connect to, making sure that the information that's out there in the public is real, because I think the fear, there's a lot of ideas circulating that aren't actually grounded in what's happening. And so we're going to keep doing outreach, keep building connections, and we will continue to support this new working group with community leaders and law enforcement. That's what I got for you.
Do we know how many raids have happened?
Unfortunately, law enforcement has not been informed. And so this is where, again, the immigrant community has concerned, our local law enforcement agencies are concerned, because the way that immigration enforcement has been working is they can come in and do what they want and they don't have to report it to anybody. So we know about raids that have happened, but we do not have an accurate count of how many raids, how many people have been detained. We don't have that information.
Just, this is a bad situation because it's like you say, there's not a lot of information out there and people don't know. I mean, if people come here, overstay their visa or go through the desert when they get here 20 years ago, I mean, ultimately they're going to have to be held accountable one way or another. I mean, unfortunately, but the thing is that they've since married and have kids and stuff. So it gets very complicated. And the issue is, who do they trust? Because even your organization, I mean, you could be hit by a subpoena to, just say, hey, who's contacted you? So the immigrant community has to know or should know who they can go to for help without exposing themselves to being arrested. I mean, I don't know how we get through that, but I'm and listening to you and understanding what's going on. I think that we, Barnstable County, the commissioners and the Human Rights Commission, should have some kind of policy that we put forward publicly. And how are we going to deal with this? You know, that we respect the process, that everyone should have a chance to contest their removal, and that we intend to do what we can to support the families. I mean, I know there are various pantries, food pantries. We went through a lot of that during COVID, but I mean, I assume that they would also be reaching out to families that have lost their breadwinners. So I know we coordinated that during COVID. Hopefully we can do that a little bit now. But so I just think that I just feel that it's a very complicated situation. I don't envy you. And I think that we Barnstable County should put out exactly where we stand on this and what we can do, and not to resist. We don't want to be take the attention of the feds, but basically to make the situation better than what it is now.
In response to that, I will share two things. One, I used to get phone calls directly from immigrants who were experiencing discrimination and harassment. Almost every call now comes from a third party, from a service provider who's calling on behalf of an immigrant, exactly because of that, because of the fear. And I'm not a scary person, but I do understand, and so I've been working more with service.
The concern is that as Commissioner Bertram
Exactly.
said, you don't know who to trust,
Right.
and who has to sort of out someone or tell on someone.
Exactly.
So there's just tremendous caution. I've been invited to several meetings where these very real issues have been discussed.
Yeah.
There's a lot of frustration.
Yes.
About it. I do want to just draw our attention to, when we talk about statements, that the town of Falmouth, the town of Falmouth put out a statement not so long ago, and I think if we're looking at things to sort of statements that might be worth looking at and reviewing, that may have some insight for us in terms of what to say. I think I would recommend the Falmouth board. In fact, the Enterprise actually did an editorial praising the select board for stepping up and speaking to this issue. I do know at some point there'll be more groups speaking out to this. I know there's a real concern about the impacts on the economy as well. I mean, so the collateral damage to all of this. I've heard from many in the business community that they have been impacted, and I think they're trying to get a handle on how to quantify and how to get a handle on that. And clearly, there are these channels that have been set up by other folks to make sure that people get access to good legal counsel. Because the situation that I've seen in the past, Commissioner, is some folks get taken advantage of in a situation like this. I've seen that happen, and that's really troublesome. So,
well, I would just to interject quickly. Not so long ago, that someone who sat in these seats right here recommended that Barnstable County take an active role in outing illegal immigrants and rounding them up. Someone here who was a commissioner did that publicly.
Fortunately.
And fortunately, that didn't happen. I think he was ready to offer a bounty on the illegal immigrants.
On them and the seals.
Anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Mark.
No. I think
That goes to show you how voting is important. Number one, not just for us, but take that into consideration.
Yeah.
And I agree. I think it would be good for us to make a statement. And I remember the Falmouth, which was pretty direct about how they felt about it. What can we do? We're there to be an honest broker if needed. And we're here to support these people, that this is, un-American.
I would recommend continuing to work with our advisory commission
Mm-hmm.
to really think through what, if anything else, should be done. And then after you've had a chance to sort of spend some time with them and discuss
It's
this,
realistic.
let's work with the administrator in setting up a meeting where we can get you and the commissioners to come here and,
Right.
and revisit this issue in terms of what, if anything, we need to do or say. But I know there's a desire in a number of circles for more leadership, more groups and public officials speaking to this.
That's right.
And
people are afraid, and we can't be afraid.
and as you know, we have tremendous respect for our advisory commission. And I think if we're going to sort of go in a different direction, if we're going to take a step in this direction, then I think we should do it together and in tandem with the people that are working on this issue.
Agree.
Yep.
Okay.
Makes sense.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll see you again soon then.
Yep.
All right. Thank you for
Bet you when you took this job, you didn't realize what,
how that we would be facing this.
Yeah. Yeah. It's busy. It's
Yeah,
for sure.
unfortunately. Too
Yeah.
busy.
Yeah. So anyways,
Well,
thank you for your support.
Thank you, and thanks to all the commissioners
Yeah.
for everything they're doing.
Thank you.
Okay, on to a better topic. We're now going to hear from, we're going to be rebranding our septic systems. We have Jay Gardner, our health director. How are you
Good
this
morning. Nice
morning?
to see everyone.
Good to see you.
Jay Gardner, Director of Health and Environment. Brian is joining us remotely. Commissioners, this is a follow-up from a earlier conversation this spring, and to rebrand and tell the story of the significant work that's going on at the Mass TC Center. And two of the things that the take-backs that we with last presentation was to instantly the rebranding would instantly understand the technology and the impact that the Mass TC Center is making, and then also marry that with that this is a division of Barnstable County.
Exactly.
So, and a principle in marketing is the messaging is far more important, vastly more important than actually the product or the service itself. So we want to make sure that this is grabbing attention and in a significant way. So Michael has led several meetings, and we'll call it focus groups or what have you. And this is what Brian has now. Hopefully, Commissioner Forrest was part of those discussions. Hopefully, we have something that the commissioners can either approve or move on.
We want to get Brian to chime in. He's standing by patiently waiting
There he is.
to weigh in on this very, very
And
heavy
he's ready to
topic.
give us a
Exactly.
song if we request it.
Good morning, Brian Baumgartel,
Good
Director of the Wastewater Division. I would have loved to be there with you this morning. I had a little bit of a childcare hiccup this morning, so I'm here from home. I do want to bring to you a couple of logo options for this new center that we're moving toward, and then an adjustment to our tagline, which I believe you have in front of you. So without further ado, we had a graphic designer put together a couple of concept logos for us. And I think they did a pretty good job coming up with some, nice, clean, and simple designs that incorporate, I think, the needs of the organization in terms of how we brand it, and also making sure that Barnstable County is, front and center in that presentation as well. So this is the first of the two designs. Very simple, incorporates the water drop, the Barnstable County and the fish. And then the second design is, again, incorporating those same elements, but with a little bit different layout, with putting the water drop behind the A. These were the two that really stood out to us as a group, and we wanted to present the two to you to make a decision on which one we want to go with, or if you'd like us to obviously go back to the drawing board, but I think these are a couple of good options. So turn it back to you for the discussion on that.
Hey, guess it's a matter of taste in the eye of the beholder.
No, I think we got it.
I think this is the better
I
one.
think we figured it out.
I'm not sure if I
like the first one, to be honest.
Yeah, this one.
Which one?
I like to.
Yeah.
All right, that's
It's
unanimous.
less busy and it's more straightforward.
Right,
Yeah, it jumps out at you.
it does indeed. And it's
Okay.
better with the drop beside it as opposed.
Well, the drop
to
stands out, the water.
Yes, It kind of like, what is that with what's behind the A? I
So
don't
there
get
you
it,
go.
but now you see it's a water drop.
Mhm.
So
Well done.
this is what we vote for. It's
All right.
unanimous.
All right.
3 thumbs up.
There it
Oh, I
is.
may have a
Thank you.
motion, Madam Chair,
Yes,
that we vote to rename the Massachusetts Alternative Septic System Test Center site as the Barnstable, as the,
for clean.
make
water.
sure I get this right, because I want to work right. The
County.
Clean Water Center
Barnstable
Barnstable
County.
and, what else do we need?
Other than, the only other thing I would say is you could put Barnstable County above the Clean Water Center, but I'm
No.
always pushing.
Let's refer to it, yeah, and that.
No, but it is pretty
We
clear.
further endorse this branding and logo
Right.
Story
that's
cell.
been presented to us today.
What do you
So-
think?
Additionally, there is a tagline, Brian, if you want
Yes,
to.
Oh, yes.
Yep.
It's a good tagline, yeah. I
There
think
we
it
go.
takes advantage of the Gates Foundation. Now that we've got the
Oh, yeah.
partnership with the Gates Foundation and we're playing a role, internationally, we might as well take advantage of that
Right.
relationship, right?
Absolutely.
So there you go, local solutions, global
I
impact,
like.
meeting the
tagline.
clean water needs of the world.
Right. There's a perception, a paradigm that modernization, you need AI, or you need a chip, or you need, this is technology that is with a significant impact. And it's very simple, but explains local solutions. And as you know, Gates Foundation can go anywhere in the world. And they came here to Barnstable County.
Right.
The impact is significant. They're not the only one that's going to be doing accreditations, but they have the market share on that. And this is going to vault us to a whole new level, and we need to demonstrate that and storytell
They
that.
do. They
Mhm.
do.
That's great. So that's my motion.
And I'm seconded.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All
Okay.
right.
Very good.
Anything else?
Always good to see you.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you
Always
so
good to
much.
see you. I'm
And
thinking of other
hope to
things
see
do.
you. Hope to see you at the event on the 26th, 12
We
to
will be
1:30,
there.
which will
Yep.
be our ribbon cutting. So,
We will be there.
We'll be there.
Okay,
right.
great.
thank you
Great.
so much.
How's, if I may, it's a little, I'd like a report on how you're doing with your testing.
I so appreciate it. Well, so this is a couple different things. Well, with the testing, we'll say the beach sampling program is concluding this week, right? We have the 350 samples that are done across the 15 communities. So that's sampling. We had a little appreciation event for our beach samplers, and we've sent them off either back to school or to other chapters that they're doing. Hopefully some will return. So that testing program is concluding this weekend. I think what you're referring to is the PFAS sampling. That is launching this week.
Okay.
And we're excited on that part. Here's the piece that the unknown was, what kind of response were we going to get, right? The 300 or so, we didn't know. It filled up in 48 hours.
I announced it at a,
Yeah.
at a board meeting,
That was,
and then people were calling.
Yeah.
Saying, was it she said, and where do I go? And that's when we got it out there. There was no more.
Yeah.
There was no more.
that was the variable that we couldn't, we weren't sure of. Michael has come up with creatively to say, listen, just because you didn't win the lottery for the free testing,
Right.
we may be able to help and bring everyone under the fold. And that's what we want to do. So that's in discussion with the lab now to say, just
Okay.
because they didn't win the free testing, we might be able to also drive visitors and help
Right.
residents as
Yeah.
well.
Right.
Not with
I
free,
think
but
we need to make it clear, our intention is to make the resource available to the community. The board was very
We had
strong
an
on that.
opportunity.
Right, so it's good that we're doing the free and helping
Yeah.
that out, but we want to make the service available
Right.
to anybody in
Yeah.
Barnstable County who has a private well that's concerned about their water quality
Right.
and make sure that they have access to an affordable test.
the price point might not be the same, but Michael is
Right.
making them aware that we do have that.
If we have a price point issue, then my recommendation, Madam Chair, is that we find a way to underwrite
I agree.
or help discount
We
the
have to
cost
see if we can
to keep
discount
it
it at least.
affordable.
Because it is going to be more and more necessary for people to do this. And,
And PFAS is an
Yeah.
issue that's
yeah,
everywhere.
and who wants to know about it? Nobody, but
Yeah.
we do need to
Yeah.
do
Homeowners
that.
They do.
Homeowners do, the towns do not. Did you see what happened at Truro?
When you think about that, within 48 hours, this filled out, you can tell the level
Right.
of interest on this. Each of you have talked about that. Right?
So
And
some-
Michael,
Well, that's the reason why we pushed for this,
Yeah.
is we knew the interest would be high.
right.
What we need to do is make it available, make sure that this testing ability is available to the community at large.
Someone in Wellfleet told me that some years ago, there was a PFAS test going on, I think when everything blew up with the academy.
Okay.
And the one individual that their well kind of dinged was a former fireman.
Okay.
So those are things, because he could come home, wash his stuff, go into the,
Sure.
when you think about it. So,
Okay.
those might be a target audience.
Madam Chair, just to ask you.
And we're a little off topic here. We're going off agenda, so we can't go too deep into this.
But yeah, my recommendation, and probably do this already, is that you do a test of someone's well, you report it, and then if later on, a month later, someone across the street has a test and someone down the block has a test. After a while, you get, because a lot of those wells are not just point sources, but also the general, makeup of the groundwater. After a while, you may get patterns saying of certain areas have an issue as opposed to other areas. You don't have to put a name on it, but
No, and the commissioner, you understand this is a small subset. This is
Right.
about 2% of the sampling. So we're going to make sure there is a geofence, making sure that it's geographically distributed properly. So we have some information here,
Exactly.
not just on one street.
Right.
Because there's only maybe 5 samples in one community, there may be 17 in another, as best we can to distribute them to give us some useful information for a longitudinal study.
Right.
yeah, but some people will come to you, right, and get their water tested.
And they do, yes.
And
Right.
that will have a record of where they are.
I understand your point. Okay, yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Right, because we're getting, we've talked about this before, is that we'll be in a position, once we get the test results, to get an idea if there may be a larger problem.
Right.
In a community. But people, if there is an elevated PFAS, if there is some contaminant.
Right.
In a water resource, people will be looking for answers in terms of where that may have come from, and that could be a bit challenging for us.
Right.
And so, it may very well be that they need some help. The thing that I'm learning just from my own experience in various towns is that septic systems are part of the problem. There's so much stuff that's PFAS laced.
Right.
That's flushed down the toilet or ends up in the septic system. And it also speaks to the need for, in some communities where this is a real problem, the importance of some of these alternative systems aren't good at dealing with this problem. So it becomes a factor in a community in terms of making decisions about how they approach a comprehensive game plan for wastewater treatment.
And in the instances that you're talking about, DEP is going to become a collaborative partner in this, where many times when septic and what have you, the regulations of Title V, I'm not going to say combative, but it hasn't been collaborative. DEP is going to be collaborative in this nature.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We're going to make that. That's going to be important. They need to be an active participant.
They do.
Right.
Before they bring down hammers.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Jay, good to see you.
Pleasure to see you
As
all.
always.
Thanks.
Thank
Enjoy
you.
Labor Day.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you.
And thank you, Brian. Okay, so now our exciting item is our fiscal year of 2025, an update. And we have with us Carol Pola, our finance director. You this morning?
Good morning. How are you this morning?
I did peruse this last night as I had a dinner party and I had a lot of cleanup, but I get this coffee afterwards and that would help me clean my house. And then I was up at, early because it was still there.
So I'd like to share this presentation with you. Need access. So go.
Okay,
Everything seems to be very slow today.
Yeah.
I can see that.
Oh,
even the
um,
wheels moving slow.
Are we with Comcast? Obviously, yeah. Is that our internet
I presume,
provider?
yeah. Actually, I don't know.
they did put out a thing that they're doing work, so things are gonna get slow.
So this is other presenting to you today the financial results of fiscal year 2025. We closed the year on August 15th. It was what we call a hard close of the fiscal year. We welcomed our auditors the following Monday, so they were here last week for the week, and they're continuing to work on the county's audit from afar these days, or this week. We finalized the year with just under $84 million in cash over among 115 funds. And you see those fund numbers, if you recognize previous presentations, those fund numbers have gone down.
Yeah, they have.
They've gone down significantly, and
Right.
we've worked really hard at that. And it's not that we're not managing less money. We're
Right,
just
No, we
doing it
understand.
different. We've consolidated. When I first came here, I tried to run balance sheets for the county, all the balance sheets, and the system would time out on me. There were so many funds.
mhm,
And so we've really taken a different approach, and it's manageable now.
good,
It's really, it's provided great assistance, and so nevertheless, we'll continue to strive to bring those numbers down. Cash was reconciled to all the accounts. There's 21 of them. We diversify our cash and are required to maintain our cash for stabilization, OPEB trust, things of that nature, ARPA funds. And now the new grants, the new Gates Foundation grant is separated into a separate cash account as well. So that's one of the reasons why we have 21 funds. The other, as I mentioned, is we diversify. So revenue here is provided for the general fund, Cape Cod Commission, dredge, and all other funds. We had good financial results. You're going to be pleased, I think, as this presentation continues. We had a surplus in revenue in the general fund, and I have a breakdown of that to come. Most of that was in the Registry of Deeds. As far as the Cape Cod Commission, while their actual revenue came below what their budget was, they also had a budgeted reserve that was coming from their restricted fund balance, which they didn't need to utilize because their expenses also came down below what was budgeted. Same for dredge. Dredge, you'll see the results of dredge are very positive. You'll be pleased to know that they're adding to their retained earnings. And all of the other funds that we manage come down to that revenue of like $41 million in fiscal year 2025.
On the dredge revenues, are there revenues that are likely to still sort of, your accounts receivables that we're still waiting for to come in, or is that?
Yes. As of June 30, 2025.
The question, Carol, is I'm just curious, at the end of the day, when we completely close the books, are the revenues that we budgeted going to be pretty much in line with what we end up getting?
Yes, absolutely. There's I don't want to get too much into the weeds here, but there's a rule, and with governmental accounting or generally accepted accounting principles, of a 60-day rule, we call it. And so revenue that's what we consider a receivable. It was billed by June 30th, but it hasn't been received. If it comes in within the first 60 days, we recognize it as revenue in the previous fiscal year.
I see.
So there was $65,000 that was in receivables at the end of the fiscal year, which is much lower than typically when previous. And that's the intention of the folks that are admin that are working on dredge and collecting those funds and intentionally collecting them before June 30th. Right. So putting a little pressure on the communities.
Gentle pressure.
Gentle.
Yeah.
Gentle.
So can we go back to that revenue slide again?
Sure.
FY25, when we look at the dredge enterprise. So you're saying we have in receivables somewhere around 60 somewhat thousand?
Yes.
Okay. So it's not going to be up to the 27 number.
No, but your expenses weren't there either. Your
Okay,
expenses were far below the $2.7 million.
Okay. which is the next slide. Okay,
Yes.
got it. Just trying to understand. That's one of the many things I worry about with respect to county finances is keeping expenses and revenues in line.
Correct.
So to make it clear that, you know, we've been through several years of the dredge where they're concerned with the deficit, but you're saying in fiscal year 2025, there was not a deficit.
No, and you'll see further as we move along in this presentation. The expenditures for the operating budget, Cape Cod Commission, dredge are presented here as well as all the other funds. You'll see that, as you were just pointing out, dredge fund, the expenditures are $1.9 million versus the $2.3 million in revenue.
Right.
What's the explanation on the disparity with the Cape Cod Commission? It's a huge
Disparity?
Well, there's a difference. We budgeted a certain amount, but the actual is.
Well, we do know, well, so
No,
the
it's
1,500.
Cape Cod
overnight.
Cape Cod Commission budgets 100% of their staff in their operating budget. Whereas
Oh, I see.
Whereas
Right.
they'll have to have grant funds that come in and to support those staff members. And so they'll shift those funds over to the grant funds and expend them from there rather than their operating budget. That's common occurrence for Cape Cod Commission.
Right. So this is not unusual.
It's not at all.
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out.
Sure. Just a breakdown in general fund revenue for all of the departments, just looking at your departments, individual departments here. You'll see surpluses in revenue for technology and finance, facilities, you know, all of their departments did very well. You'll see the registry of deeds, the surplus is significant. Just under $4 million.
The only one was over was the health, but that's because of the lab.
The new rates in the lab, because when we were preparing the budget for fiscal year 25, we didn't have those new rates yet. And so these new rates are in a result, that means the revenue is a result of the new rates and in addition to, you know, the quantity of tests that the lab is performing. And the remainder of the areas of general fund revenue are presented here. Your investment revenue or your interest income has dropped, you'll see significantly. And the reason why is because we've segregated those funds into individual stabilization funds, such as PFAS or revenue stabilization. Whereas before those were held in the general, those balances were held in the general fund. So we have areas in our operating budget that we call other funding sources and other uses of funds. How's that? So here in FY25, the establishment of that revenue stabilization fund occurred. There also occurred PFAS O&M, operations and maintenance, that is. And then there was a budgeted reserve. Budgeted reserve was not necessary. We did not need to utilize that. And so there was, you'll see no actual revenue or no actual posted activity, financial activity with regard to that. And then the uses of those funds are just as I had mentioned before, operation maintenance of PFAS, and then your revenue stabilization fund that was funded at $13.9 million.
The budgeted reserve is a budgeted for the fiscal year itself. It's not a reserve that we have otherwise. In other words, it's established when we established the budget of the year. We established that reserve.
Right.
We established that reserve to balance the budget.
Okay.
Because we lacked sufficient revenue to balance the budget. And the budget was balanced based on what your the use of your unreserved, some of your unreserved fund balance.
Okay.
And here is a breakdown of your operating expenses for the general fund. I just broke it down salaries, expenses, and then fringe benefits, just so you can see where your surpluses are here. And then I've broken it further down by department, so you can see by department where your surpluses were. You had no deficits by department. So here's a breakdown. If you want me to slow down, I'd be happy to. Here's a breakdown of, as I had mentioned, by department, what was budgeted, what was expended, what's your available budget at the end of the fiscal year, and what was the percentage used. And you'll see mostly by these departments are utilizing quite a bit of their budgets. You'll see that areas such as the Assembly of Delegates had surplus funds here, or what I call them budget turnbacks, so or appropriation turnbacks, because they had a staff member that was budgeted, that position was not filled in fiscal year 25. We have an area of central purchasing, which it was the intention a number of years ago to provide that department for all of the departments of the county to utilize, so that we are dispersing, central supplies and things of that nature. That really hasn't gotten off the ground. That'll be an initiative, hopefully, moving forward. Right now, it's just used for strictly copy paper. And so here you are presented with the remainder of the departments, and you'll see that for the most part, these departments are they're healthy in their expenditures. None of them are overexpended. We do cut off spending as of a certain date, the fiscal year. And I can tell you that for Barnstable County, there's no gross expenses that happened like within the last 2 months of the year. It just doesn't happen.
Right, they don't rush to spend it on
because it's well known
if
you haven't, if the items weren't necessary
right
prior to the beginning of May.
Don't be afraid. We'll give it to you.
Right,
We'll give you what you need the next year. Right.
So I call them budget turnbacks, as I had mentioned, or appropriation turnbacks. They total just under $2.2 million. Your investment revenue, as I mentioned, was $1.1 million, budgeted at $250,000. So you're $750,000 ahead there. Your departmental surplus, other than the Registry of Deeds, was over $1.4 million, and your Registry of Deeds just under $4 million in revenue surplus. Just moving on to Cape Cod Commission and providing you a breakdown of their revenue. You see that they had healthy receipts of revenue. They also had a budgeted reserve of $709,000 that they did not utilize as well. And their expenses are provided here, same kind of breakdown. Salary, expenses, and fringe benefits. The Dredge Enterprise Fund revenue is provided for you here. And then their expenses as well, broken down in the same manner to salaries, expenses, and fringe. So here's some good news. We talk about GFOA best practices. I've left this on the screen, or the left-hand portion of this presentation, just as a reminder. So where did we come from? Where were our reserves as of June 30th or July 1st of 2024? What was our revenue surplus in total? $5.2 million. We returned a budget reserve that we didn't utilize. We had appropriation turnbacks of just under $2.2 million. And then we had encumbrances, which are purchase orders that were provided for vendors in 2025 that we carried forward to 26. So right now, unaudited, the unreserved or undesignated fund balance is just under $11 million for the general fund. So providing you with some information with regard to the unreserved or undesignated fund balance, as well as your stabilization funds, you can see how it's grown over the past number of years. And that's significant. You're under or you're just at $44 million
Mhm.
currently at the end of 2025.
Great.
And then just as a reminder, we have to look at long-term liabilities because we can't forget those, right?
No.
So we look at the positive and then we take a look at what's coming before us and we just
Yeah,
plan for the
we're
future.
broke.
No, we just plan for the future. It's good news to have.
No, but we have, it's not like it's just sitting there with nothing to do.
Right.
We have a lot of expenses.
So I did hear from the Cape Cod Commission yesterday, and the executive committee of the commission met on August 14th, and they reviewed and approved the designations of their restricted fund balance. And so this information I had not had before, and so I appreciate it very much. And so that we have an understanding of what the funds they're setting aside and for what purposes.
That's good.
It's great. Providing you information on dredge retained earnings. When we look at enterprise funds, you know, we measure them as surpluses or deficits or, you know, as I call them, turnbacks, budget turnbacks. And they translate into a retained earnings calculation, and they're retained in that fund rather than closing out to the general fund, and retained in that fund for the use of dredge enterprise funds. And you're just under $700,000, which is a great improvement.
Absolutely.
And that concludes my presentation, and I welcome any questions or discussion matters.
Well, first applause to
Yeah.
you. And thank you for all your hard work. Carol has a real expertise in this matter, and we're very lucky to have her. Any questions, comments?
No, I think kudos also to our departments.
And our departments
administration.
for being very
This is clearly teamwork.
fiscally
Everybody
responsible.
has to participate.
That's right.
Yeah,
And be part of the program. And can I finish?
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I want to commend, you know, everyone really for focusing on making sure that, you know, when we get to the end of the fiscal year, Carol had mentioned this before, that there's no, you know, funding frenzy or spending frenzy at the end of the fiscal year. This is something that you normally see at the state level, sometimes at the federal level, a lot, where all of a sudden people are just looking to sort of make commitments and obligate funds at the very end. Now, I think collectively, all of our departments have shown tremendous discipline and have been incredibly helpful in making sure that we can, you know, make ends meet and deal with the financial challenges that we're wrestling with. I'm glad to see that the dredge situation is clearly the revenues changes that have been made there have made a difference and have clearly been a huge boost forward in terms of improving the situation there. So I think that's another very, very good sign. And no, I think overall we've gone through the fiscal year in strong shape. Now the question is when you go to the liabilities, it's like, okay, how do we? And again, this is going to be the conversation that I hope we have soon. And that is, you know, what kind of game plan can we put together, you know, for dealing with that $190 million? What are the items that we have to tackle this year and next year in the near term? And then what are some of the items that we can sort of lay out and schedule and think through, you know, how best to approach some of those liabilities. I know there's stuff that we have to deal with right away, particularly the work on this building.
Right.
So there are things like that. So I look forward to working with you folks on that. I know we've talked about setting aside some time to sort of make, you know, come up with a plan, at least an initial plan, something along those lines. So the sooner we get to that, the better. Thank you.
You're welcome. Ron?
Yeah, just to say that, you know, anytime that we exceed our revenue projections and we spend less than we expect to spend, it's a good thing, you know. And I have to say, along with my fellow commissioners, that the budget process that I've witnessed over now maybe 18 years has improved remarkably over the last few years. It's amazing, you know, not only are we more fiscally solid, but also it's all the numbers are out there so we can understand exactly, you know, what we're faced with and where revenue comes from and where it's going to. So, and as far as future liabilities go, well, you know, we are looking at an uncertain future, but then so is everybody else. So what we can do is go year by year and make sure that we cover our expenses and anticipate what we're going to have to deal with in the future.
I agree. Okay, Carol, thank you. We look forward to having you back. Hopefully more good news then. But we will have that conversation about how are we going to face the future together and
I have to
be
say,
responsible.
one thing is, I think our revenue from the registry was over 5 million more,
Just under 4.
just under 4, which is about 20% of what we anticipated.
So there was,
Keep buying those houses.
I think you forwarded that there is sort of they're looking at, we're evening out here on housing prices and which should happen. As one of the staff people who are planners and in Wellfleet said to me, all the millionaires are being pushed out by the billionaires on Nantucket, and they're all coming to Wellfleet. So, which is not a pretty sight. It's not a pretty sight what they're building. So they think it's beautiful, but it's not. It has a lot of light, a lot of space, a lot of land they take, you know, it's stone. You know, yeah, great. I love it. You know, nice to visit, but somewhere else, please. Anyway, now we're going to go on to our, to discuss the resolution 25-XX in support of creating an elected charter study commission. And I'm going to let our administrator take the lead here.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In your packet is, or as a supplement to your packet is a draft resolution that we have put together. And based upon the comments at your last meeting and some of the comments I've received from the commissioners individually of what we put together is in front of you. The gist of it is for your benefit and for anybody watching their benefit, it essentially, well, I'll read what it resolves, that the Barnstable County Board of Regional Commissioners, under the authority vested in them by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, that a question be placed on the upcoming biennial state election ballot to create, which is November of 26, to create an elected charter study commission and elected commission members representing each town in Barnstable County in accordance with Chapter 801 of the Acts of 1985. So that is the key language. Obviously, rationale for that is prior to that, but essentially what is in front of you triggers an election in November of 26, asking the voters of Barnstable County if they want to create an elected charter study commission, and then at the same election, electing representatives from each town to be on that charter commission.
Will those people be, that's for for 2026?
For November 26th.
So we will have those people in place. So not only are they going to vote on, yes, we're going to give this, but we will vote on these people as well. So that will all happen at once.
All happens at the same election.
Okay.
And then after that, the Charter Study Commission has 18 months in which to propose what it's going to propose. And then that, in theory, that goes back to the voters in November of 2028.
So my question is, this is a big endeavor. And I do think it's going to be worth our while to have like focus groups. I mean, get into the different regions, like the commission does with the 208 or whatever they're doing these things, get into these communities. And I would think that the league would be very good in assisting us as far as a independent voice with us, not just our projection of what we see going to happen here, but
Right.
but an outside source saying, you know, we support this for these reasons, and this is what the possibilities could be. And, you know, the outcomes, the positive and the, you know, and if you want to look at negative, we could look at that as well. So I think that if we're going to go forward with this, then we have to start setting up engagement groups, getting that out, communication, so people understand what it is that they're going to be seeing on that ballot and not
Exactly.
wait, you
Yeah,
know, and that would have to start early, right at the beginning of next year. And we could all be part of this roadshow and take questions and kind of get a feel for
yeah, I
what's
think,
going to happen.
it was, I'm glad you raised that. I think it was fortunate for us to have the league participate in our last meeting,
Mhm,
because they clearly have an interest
they do.
in this whole topic.
And they're an
this whole subject.
independent broker in a way, you know, they don't
Right.
have a feeling one way or the other, but they believe in Barnstable County, that's for sure.
Right. And they've been very strong supporters of a regional government.
Right.
So, yeah, I think our job will be to find ways to work with them and other civic groups to sort of help
Mhm.
get the word out as to what this is all about and how people can participate, how other organizations
And learn
can
more.
participate. Yeah, I think it's also important for us to, and I know our administrators out and about, talking to groups about county government. I think we're going to need to do more of that.
Right. And we're all gonna have to participate. I think it would be in our interest to do so, just so we can
Exactly.
connect with, you know, what is the mood out there and how many people really understand? Because a lot of people are gonna say, this is this, you know, power grabs.
Exactly.
And it's not, this is for you to consider how you want this to go.
Exactly.
You could have no change, you could have change, but we're waiting for you to help do that. Ron?
Well, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how this evolves because, you know, in some of the debates within the assembly, the question was, well, should we vote for a commission even though we don't know where it's going, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, the question is that you're asking the citizens to vote for a charter review commission, and I think they will because, I mean, there's no harm in looking at what Portsmouth County is
Exactly.
doing now.
Right.
But, you know, it was going to be, if they do agree to have the charter commission, it would be an interesting 18 months.
It will.
And there'll be a lot of voices that will, you know, enter into it.
That will pipe up from nowhere.
I'm curious, one question is there's going to be a member from each town? Is that quite?
Yeah.
Now, is that going to be a weighted vote?
Yes,
It is
the,
going to be a weighted.
under
It
the
is
provisions, of chapter, that's spelled out by state law.
By
In our-
state law,
In our
I know.
resolution, we make reference to the state law that governs this, and that's chapter 801 of the Acts of 1985. It was that law that governed the original
Mhm.
charter commission, and when it was set up, weighted votes were part of their decision. That's how they voted in the original charter commission. So that law still applies to any subsequent elected charter commission here in Barnstable County.
You know, it's one thing for us to add, we can advocate for the passage, obviously, we're supporting this because we're voting for it, so we can advocate for the passage of this. Once the charter commission is established, the question is how much advocacy do we do? Does the assembly do? Do we stay out of it
We
completely?
have to sort of step aside.
We have to step aside, so at that point, we basically hand it over to this commission, and they're the ones who are gonna do the dog and pony show.
I think
They're the ones who are gonna do
the
And
it.
hopefully they'll have us come and talk about how we feel about things, but.
Well, I think the important thing that we can do is provide factual information to the commission
Mhm.
and make sure that they have the resources that they need.
Right.
The law provides that they get funded, so that we'll need to make provision in a budget for their funding. Clearly staff support in making sure that the meetings are set up and they have whatever resources they need to do their job will be important. At the end of the day, when they're done with their work, they will need to issue a report. And that will be one of the things that we will need to assist in sort of helping disseminate. Like in the original commission, the Charter Commission in 1988, they put together a pamphlet that laid out their full report and recommendations.
Mhm.
And they talked in it about how they envision, you know, county government would work, the issues that it would address. And I think to some degree, you know, I think the challenges were greater. The challenges are greater today in the problems that they identified before. Some of them, you know, haven't been addressed. They envisioned a county government that could provide a whole array of services for the towns. The goal was to provide efficiencies, cost savings, regional services to save the taxpayers and the town's money.
Mhm.
And sounded nice, But here we're at. Now, there's some things that we've been able to do that have done that. And there are things that we're looking at doing.
Right.
But I believe there are ways to facilitate revisions in the charter to make it easier to do those kinds of things. But there are going to be challenges related to money. The Charter Commission, the original Charter Commission in 1988, identified revenues, county revenues, as being an ongoing issue.
Right.
And they were hoping that the delegation could help provide some additional revenues and resources, access to local aid and other things. These are all referenced in their report and their recommendations. And those are things that need to be revisited.
I agree. And back then, towns were a little bit more stable, maybe, or they could function within their means. Now that is changing. And so there may be more of an interest in what can I offload onto the county, you know, as an administrator.
Yeah.
Oh, good, I can make savings here. Let's get them in here. And
Well, I think the thing that we missed, if I can just add to that point, the thing that we missed or the commission missed in 1988 was the complete change in local government. Because when this document was adopted, each town, most of the towns in the Cape had full-time
right.
select boards and were not managed by a professional administrator.
And they weren't gonna, you know, there was a lot of resistance because it was regionalization. I mean, I remember when I first got elected, that was like a dirty word. And I'm like, you don't have to do everything regionally, but there's, you know, we could save some money somewhere here if we all work together.
No, there were some boards that were very concerned about losing control.
Yes,
So
right. And that's, I think we've proven that's not our game. We're
no,
there
I
to really
think
help.
that in part helped inspire the creation of the Assembly of Delegates.
Right.
Because when I look back over the history of Barnstable County and particularly the deliberations back then, because back then I was on a task force working to create the Cape Cod Commission. So we were watching, that
Right.
group was watching closely what the county, what the charter commissioners are doing, trying to figure out how are these things going to tie together.
Right.
Eventually that did come together, but the real concern among the regular charter commissioners was that the select boards would not necessarily embrace regionalism.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the reasons why we're the only county in a charter with a reference to a county financial advisory board and an assembly of delegates.
Right.
The assembly was there basically so that the finance advisory board made up of select board members would have to report to another body. So,
right.
And I think that led to some souring of interest on the part of select boards to participating in the county government because there was another board that would have final say on their recommendations, and they didn't necessarily go along with them. So
right.
I think as former State Senator Rob O'Leary said at one of the Charter Committee review meetings is that he said his one big regret was allowing municipalities to be disenfranchised.
Yes.
And I think that was an important point.
That's a good film to go over again, what both he and Henri offered, because it does give you a background. Ron?
You guys done?
Yes, I know you're
Okay,
chomping at the bit over there.
No, I'm just patiently
I
waiting as
know,
usual.
I'm sorry.
And anyway, you have to recognize that the county does things for individual people on the Cape that not directly related to help to the towns. I mean, things like the Shine program and some of the grants that we oversee are direct, you know, even the testing center. I mean, that basically goes directly to citizens, whether they live in Harwich or Wellfleet and so on. So it's not just regionalization of town functions. And, you know, I even hesitate to say this, but I mean, to start off, we're going to have to justify the existence of the county. We're going to have to tell people why there should be a Barnstable County and what benefits we provide, and then they can deal with the structure. So, yeah, I mean, it's, you know, because the towns are, I mean, you just saw our breakdown of the last budget. We did pretty well. Not every town is doing very well. And if things get bad, they're going to start looking at the assessment that they give us. So I just want to make sure that we may not involve ourselves in the actual dated recommendations of this committee, but we can involve ourselves in promoting the role of Barnstable County and helping people and the towns of Cape Cod.
Right. Well, I think that argument can be easily broken down by looking at the revenues, which I think between ourselves and the Cape Cod Commission, they get a lot for their dollar. And what would that cost each town to have to do? So it would be a very easy thing to sell right there, but that's.
No,
that's-
I echo Commissioner Bergstrom's point.
Yeah, I do. I agree.
That part of our job is to help the commission and the public better understand the various things that the county does. Now,
And where that.
you made
saves them.
reference, Ron, to the alternative septic system test center, which we now call the Clean
Oh, sorry.
Water Center.
You know,
I'm fine.
a rose by any other name still,
I know.
still smells as sweet,
Yes,
right?
that's-
I don't know
yeah,
how sweet that
doesn't smell
smells,
so
but
sweet.
Yeah, but let me just put a little twist in this in terms of how that work does affect the town.
Yeah.
So, for example, if your community is going to have IA systems, all right, to meet the requirements under Title V, all right, because the state is mandating that all those systems be utilized at a certain point, and that you can get exempted from that requirement if you have a comprehensive wastewater management plan approved by DEP. Now, in the law, no one talks about this, but it's the towns that will have to be involved in the oversight of the performance of those septic systems. The towns don't have that capability. That's why we as commissioners supported a huge EPA grant and other funding to develop this utility performance capability at the Clean Water Center, so that they could be able to assist the towns in meeting the responsibilities that each town is going to have to deal with. So that's a huge role on IA systems. That's a burden that is now on the towns, and the towns don't have that capability. They are going to be looking to the Clean Water Center for help in fulfilling those responsibilities. It's not the homeowner that is stuck with that job. It is the municipality that's going to have to stand behind the test results and the performance of an IA system
Right.
in a community.
It's
anyway,
being
so
public utilities and all that stuff,
We
right,
need-
which we're gonna be doing.
are we prepared for to vote to?
You wanna
Yes,
make a motion?
We are. Make a
That I
motion,
can say?
please.
Go ahead, okay.
Oh, go ahead, Ron.
I move to introduce resolution 25 to be named the numbered later to support of creating an elected charter study commission.
And I will second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. All right.
Now, this is a resolution, Madam Chair, just for clarity's sake. This is just our resolution. It doesn't have to go anywhere else, but it's ours in and of itself. So I'm not sure what kind of number it's going to get, but
You mean on the docket?
well, it says resolution 25 dash to be
Right.
named later. This is.
So this is, you're correct. This is your resolution. This goes from you to the Secretary of State's
Right.
office.
Okay,
So my hope envisioning in this is that there be a letter from the administrator submitting this on our behalf to the Secretary of State, and that our administrator work with counsel to make sure that Secretary of State's office fully understands the implications of all of this,
Right.
and addresses any questions that they might have. So is that a fair?
Mhm.
That's a fair way to proceed. Any concerns about that? Okay,
Yep.
good. Thank you.
Okay, new business. Is there any new business that we did not reasonably anticipate? Other than I have a question. My question is on our, or maybe I should take it up on our future. I'll take it up on future.
Okay.
Okay, so we're moving on to the consent agenda.
But if I could just
You have some-
ask you
something
to,
that we didn't anticipate.
to take out item F under your consent agenda, it's 8F, that pertains to me.
Mhm.
I think there was an error made in the calculation.
Okay.
I'd love to get that amount of money, but I don't think I'd do that.
Cost that much, yeah, that means
You
you're having
say,
a
where
real
did you go?
vacation. That means you-
Well,
It is,
hit the
I will
best place,
say,
which I would recommend. actually,
Well, it
if I
is-
go to Florida.
I booked, just so you have some detail, I booked a room through the conference website, and I have a feeling, I think that the conference website gave me the regular rate of the room
Oh.
and not the conference rate.
Discounted rate.
And I will say the regular rate is mind-boggling, but
It is.
it's the way it is
Okay,
now.
So,
We're
Madam
taking
Chair,
out
I'd like to move to authorize the commissioner's consent agenda items 8A through 8, is it L?
E,
Hell,
L, with the deletion of 8F as listed on our August 27th, 2025 agenda.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, moving on to commissioners' report. Well, we all had a grand day with the governor, as everyone
Yes.
knows.
Actually,
And
2 days.
I'm very happy that, she, and the state is recognizing biodiversity and the importance of it and actually putting some money behind their words. And very active, good, great groups around the Cape will be involved. Anything else?
Yeah, I just to say, we also had a ribbon,
Oh, right.
ribbon cutting, at the, park and ride at what used to be exit 10. I don't know what number it is now, but it's in Harwich, of the, solar panels that were installed there as part of the state program to, increase, or decrease reliance on fossil fuels. I think the number that they gave us, it would probably be enough to power 50 homes of Cape Cod.
Wow.
And it's part of an ongoing program, but there's also another array somewhere else on the Cape, but it was quite well attended. The governor wasn't there, but her representatives were.
Yes.
And I also attended the event that you mentioned and on the biodiversity.
Yes, and thanks to the Audubon for
Yeah.
pursuing and keeping on that. All right, upcoming business. Well, we're looking at, that's where I'm going to, we're looking at our upcoming business. Our next meeting is September. Well, we're going to be touring the water center. No,
on the 26th,
on the
which is
26th.
that
So what is
one-off
the
Friday
tour
meeting.
of? Oh, this is the tour of the machine gun
Oh, on the 5th?
joint base. So
It's
we're just
just
gonna
a
have tour
base.
of joint base. Right.
The 5th of Friday, the 5th, it's just a general tour of the base.
Well, it
correct.
says here September 9th, Tuesday. Is that the right date or is it the 5th?
Oh, that's the 5th.
Okay, so we'll change that. And then so our next meeting, regular meeting is on the 10th. We'll be reviewing IT. And we'll hear about the regional policy plan where that was extended. Okay, and we're going to be going to, and we have our Barnstable County open house that day. So we want to make sure everybody knows that. I have put that out. I'm curious how many people, they are at Cape come. And then we have one Cape and then all of these other things. My question is on this paper that you give us, ordinances waiting for action by AD, and none of them were originated by the board. So AD is Assembly of Delegates, I take it, and Board of Regional Commissioners. Are
Correct.
these ordinances that they have created and haven't been waiting to talk to people about, or?
So generally, what we will do is list any ordinances that you have passed, Board of Regional
Right.
Commissioners has passed, and is waiting for action with the Assembly of Delegates, or vice versa. But right now, there are none. There are no ordinances in the proverbial hopper that need to
Okay.
be voted by
that
you
we did
or
for
them.
Okay, this is just stuff that's maybe coming up. Okay, does anybody else have anything to say about upcoming business or?
No.
All right, we're moving on to the county administrator and staff report.
Well, thank you, and I will turn it over to Sonia Sheasley in just a moment. I've got a couple of items, but I will turn it over to Sonia to give you an update on the county open house upcoming, which was just mentioned.
Mhm.
I do want to mention that Clerk of Courts has invited you to tour this building, the courts portion of Superior Court's portion of this building. And I think probably the best, she's very flexible, but the best dates for you probably are either before or after your meeting on Wednesday, September 10th. So I don't think you need any formal notification, but if you want to come a few minutes early or stay a few minutes later, I think she would like to give you some idea of what activities go on in this building. So
Are you saying that we had a date? I missed something there.
no, there's no date,
Okay.
but I just figure to make it
We could do on
efficient.
Wednesday, if we
Right,
plan
right.
sometime after or before.
Right.
It'll probably be after. Okay, so let's talk about that, commissioners, and have a tour. I think would be good since we're going to be doing a lot of renovations.
Yes.
And anything else?
And I just wanted to circle back on our dredge permit optimization study. We should be getting the final report shortly. And we will sit and come up with recommended course of action. The permit optimization study focuses on some of the barriers and the hurdles from a permitting perspective. The study will give you some management options. And I think in my conversations with Ken, we have sort of narrowed down the best options to a recommendation. So we'll come to you with a more formal recommendation and obviously a copy of the study itself. So that'll be forthcoming, I hope, within the next 30 days or so. And then just also a reminder, I'm going to come to you with some written proposals on budget process. Commissioner Bergstrom, suggested that over the 20 years we've made great strides. I think obviously we have, very obviously we have, but I think you never want to let something just sit as is. You want to see if you can make it better. So I think there are ways to make it better, both for you, for the assembly, and for staff. And so I'll come to you with some suggestions there.
Okay, excellent.
And I would turn it over, if you would permit, to Sonia.
Good morning, Sonia.
Good morning, commissioners. For
You're
the
muted.
record,
Okay, there we are.
for the record, Sonia Sheasley, Communications Manager. So I just wanted to give you a brief update on the upcoming open house. It's scheduled for Wednesday, September 10th from 11 to 3. And of course, this is a great opportunity to open our doors to the public and showcase our work, and perhaps also very timely with events going on. It will be held in the Harborview Room, which is where all the department tables will be showcasing their work, and then the Mary Pat Conference Room. We will have a health fair put on by the public health nurses from 11 to 1:30, and then we'll have 2 guest speakers. I think Phineas Fisk from Tales of Cape Cod. He'll be presenting on the history of the colonial courthouse, and he'll also be discussing the significance of the date September 27th, 1774. He's come to talk to us about it before. It's technically Barnstable County Independence Day. It's when several, I think over 1,000 residents on Cape Cod protested the intolerable acts. So he'll be talking about that, and then we'll also be having Nancy Rubin Stewart, who's the author of The Muse of the Revolution. She'll talk about Mercy Otis Warren and how her political writings helped shape the American independence. And a special complement to that will be former County Commissioner and Treasurer Mary LeClaire, who will be dressed up in costume as Mercy Otis. And
There you go. She's dying to do that.
she's very excited to do it. So we'll have actually a special history table over there at the Mary Pat Room, and we'll have a banner with our history timeline. And we're going to be doing giveaways of the book that we have, 3 Centuries of Cape Cod County, 1685 to 1985. Robin had found 3 extra boxes of that book down in the basement of the Superior Courthouse. So we would like to share some of those with the public as giveaways. So the other thing I wanted to add is, of course, I would love your participation. We have 2 welcome tables, one in each room. And I know it's a meeting day for you, and I know you'll be busy, but if you don't mind coming up afterwards, if you can, and perhaps sitting at a welcome table, we'll have programs and booklets and decals to hand out, and just welcoming folks and telling them what they can find. And And Falmouth TV will be joining us. There may be other media there, but I know that Falmouth TV will be there and looking to do a couple of quick interviews if you're open to it. So that's pretty much my update. If you have any questions, please let me know.
I very much appreciate that. This sounds very exciting, and I'm going to block out that day. And you have notified newspapers as well, I'm sure, right? As far as in the Lower Cape TV and as whatever has happened down there.
Yeah, I've done quite a bit of promotion, and I'm going to be sending out a reminder media alert as well, probably tomorrow.
Good. You mentioned this book that we have a surplus of. Did you say it was Cape Cod hunting?
No, I don't know if you can see it. You probably can't see it, but you might recognize it. It's the red book. We've seen it around. But it's called 3 Centuries of the Cape Cod County, Barnstable, Massachusetts, 1685 to 1985. And it was published by the county in 1985, commemorating our 300 year anniversary. So it's a really interesting book. They're in the office now. You can talk to Robin, and if you don't have one, you can take one.
Okay.
I refer to it a lot for our history.
Great. That's good to know.
Yes.
Here we are. We have our own copy. I'm so excited.
Yeah.
This is
So I'm gonna
great.
have to get Mercy
have one of
Otis
these?
Warren to autograph.
Yes, I know. When Mercy Otis is here, we will have her autograph.
Yeah,
Yes.
that would be nice.
That is excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, and thank you for all the work. You're doing real fine. I see us out there online a lot, so that's great. Okay, but there's only one thing left on this agenda.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all.